have a successful, 7-figure company, but I did not have a fashion background. I was figuring this out on my own, and there wasn't many doors open. And so I kind of had to figure it out myself. And I'm grateful I did because it gave me the grit I needed. But because of that, when people started coming to me telling me that they had dreams and desires, I opened my arms like probably too much, where I was like, come in, I will tell you anything that I've learned because no one helped me.
Welcome to the No One Ever Told Me podcast, where we talk about the things that no one ever tells you that you really need to know to be successful and to thrive in business and in leadership. Today's guest is Ginny Reed, founder and owner of Vinnie Louise, a multiple store retail and online boutique that's making a big impact in the fashion and apparel world. Ginny is a self-made entrepreneur who took $2,000 and in 2 years grew her brand to a 7-figure retailer, all without going into debt. A lot of things have to go right for someone to achieve that kind of success, but today Ginny shares her ups and downs and the lessons she's learned all along the way. Ginny, thanks so much for coming down to the show. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So tell us about your company, Vinnie Louise.
Yes. So it will be 7 on April 1st. So
Wow.
7 years. I started as an online boutique and then 6 months in realized I needed to have a brick and mortar. So I convinced my husband that it was the thing to do, and we opened so pretty quickly. And the first month there, I matched what I did all 6 months of online.
That's great.
And it was just a 220 square foot
That's
shop.
tiny.
So
That's
it was
awesome.
so tiny. It was a little incubator space in East Nashville. And a few months in, I was already ready and needing a warehouse, and then slowly have moved into 4 stores and a headquarters. And during COVID, we ended up closing one, but now we still have 3 strong stores, a headquarters, and we actually just opened up a little booth.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's so many questions from that. That's really good. Did you move to Nashville knowing you wanted to get into the clothing industry? Or how did that happen?
Yeah, so no clue. Growing up, I always loved the idea of having a store.
Okay.
But I also had a heart for counseling and working with women with eating disorders and body image issues. So I really wrestled with, do I want to do a store or do I want to be a counselor? I ended up taking the counseling route and was working on my master's and ended up just taking a pause and moved to Nashville for fun. And was planning on finishing my master's, but then I met my husband, who you know, and
sure do.
Kind of was like, okay, I guess I'm staying in Nashville. So I looked at grad schools here, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. Before I made that decision, I knew I needed a creative outlet, and so I actually started an antique business.
Okay.
So I painted furniture, had a little antique booth, and through that, kind of got into the chalk paint phase. And with that, I started seeing all this stuff online. So I started seeing, okay, people are selling furniture online. They're selling clothes online. That's fun. I didn't really have too much awareness of online boutiques at the time. This was, 7 years ago.
Right.
And just one day when I made the decision I wasn't going to pursue grad school, it just came to me that, you know what, I can start an online business. Like, why not?
My gosh.
And that idea came in January, the very end of January. And by April 1st, I opened.
You guys have a specific mission, though, right? Because that counseling background and that desire to help people actually influenced the way you guys did your business model, correct?
Yes, that's right. So, in the beginning, I don't think I knew that was my model.
Okay.
Through grad school, I worked at some high-end boutiques and I worked at Anthropology. And so I knew some higher end lines. And so at first I was like, I'm going to have, this brand and that brand. And then I kind of thought through, well, no one's going to buy that expensive named brand from like an online store they don't know.
Yeah.
And then I really started thinking, you know what, like that's actually not even me. I shop at TJ Maxx, I shop at the Anthro sales section, and I really had to identify like who my customer was going to be and to kind of step away from, the pride of, I know all these brands, and really get down to, what is my purpose in this? And that is when kind of my mission really took hold. And that was, I really wanted to relate to anyone. I wanted any woman to come in and be excited that they could afford a $26 top. And we also sold things that were a little bit more flowy, so it resonated with, curvier women too. Mm-hmm. And, my biggest thing was I want every single person that's looking online to feel seen and feel heard, even if it's virtual.
Yeah.
And then that also took effect when we opened the brick and mortar.
So you carved out a specific niche with your clients based on price points and style of clothes.
Yes.
And that was all downstream of your desire to help a specific kind of profile of your customer.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How many months were you online only before you knew brick and mortar was an option?
So in the beginning, it was actually really funny. I have another venture that we can talk about later. I ended up looking back at my pitch. I worked with a wordsmith to kind of help me with my taglines in the beginning. And so reading my desire from what it was in the beginning to what it manifested so quickly into just a few months later was funny. I definitely did not have even the confidence to think I'd ever have a store. I mean, my goal was maybe to have a mobile boutique. And a store scared me at first.
It's risky, yeah.
But getting into it, and even just a month in, I was already thinking of the mobile boutique. And I just knew my connection with my customers and then the products that I was finding. I was really proud of the products I was finding. Yeah. I had never seen prices this good. And so I was like, I want to get this into as many hands as possible. And I knew that I needed to have a space where people could come and grab it and not wait a few days to get it shipped. And so I was just looking, and then I saw this brick and mortar space in East Nashville online, and I looked at the numbers and I was like, this I can do. And so the price of it is really what took away the fear.
Okay.
But I was pretty set, I would say probably even within the first month, that I needed to start getting in front of more people.
You knew. That's good. But mobile to brick and mortar, that's one transition in the business. When was the decision to open up multiple sites? Because that doesn't just, add more problems. That multiplies more problems when you try to scale at multiple stores.
Yes. And it is not for everyone, and it is not for the faint of heart. I am a visionary. My husband is a way big visionary than me. He always was like, what's next? And I'm very much in the moment of just what makes sense. And each time it just made sense. And so, my space was small, but I was in a lease, and my online was growing. So it made sense for me to get a headquarters. It made sense for me to have a place to process the product so it wasn't on the floor, so we could keep the shop tidy. And that made sense to me. And then the next, a space was opening up a few doors down. And I was like, we've outgrown. It makes sense to move. And so for me, it wasn't in the beginning, I want to have 10 stores or I want to have a franchise. It was always kind of looking at where am I at now and what makes sense for the near future.
That's good. So that strategy was kind of downstream of need. As things grew, you just took the next step in front of you.
Yes.
What gave you the courage to know that every time you take those steps, more risk is added to the equation, but you just stayed on track? You stayed courageous towards those decisions. What gave you your North Star that we're going to keep going this way?
I think the impact it was having on the customers.
Okay, talk about that. That's good.
So I heard stories that I didn't even know I would hear as an owner of a retail store. Sure. And so the connections that I was having with my customers and their need and desires for us to even expand, I had to start listening to. And I've had women tell me they're getting divorced. I've had women come in the night they got engaged to tell me they got engaged. Curvier women cry because they've never fit into a boutique, piece.
Okay.
And so the experience I was having, I wanted to be able to continue to replicate that in other locations for our community to grow and to continue to fit like the need, not just for what Vinny was, but for the need for my customer.
So the stories were also kind of a part of your dashboard. It's
Yes.
like, of course, there's the sales metrics and you're looking at all of your data there, but there's something kind of special about that personal connection, right?
Yes.
Did you know that was going to be the case when you started?
I've always been a people person. I think counseling being my background, I have always just wanted to hear people's story. I think I always knew that was going to be there. I don't think I knew that I was going to be as sales focused as I was. And they both make sense,
Yeah.
I mean, if you make a customer feel so loved and you genuinely love them and you genuinely love like the products you're selling, like it's going to like in return bring in more sales. So of course it was, I want to hear from the community. I want to grow because of the community, but also, I wanted to grow in more financial freedom, and I wanted to grow like financially to bless my team more, to put some of them on salary, to be able to get benefits for my family too. And so it was definitely twofold.
There's stuff that goes into retail that a lot of people may not understand. I remember having conversations with Kyle about you're very involved. When you launch a new location, you contact the general contractor, you work on negotiating your lease at the space. You have a very specific aesthetic that goes into that. Where did you pick up those skills?
I laugh at what I do sometimes because when you say you own a retail store, sometimes you don't know all of that.
Right.
My dad and my stepfather both were in the building industry.
Okay.
And so and then my aunt's a realtor. So I've always like loved design, building, layouts. And it was again like this, in the beginning, I had this really small space and it wasn't intimidating. But as it grew, I just knew I had to continue to think more into the process. It wasn't this like one and done. It was a deeper thing. And then as Vinny grew and as our brand grew, I then knew we have to continue to replicate that aesthetic. And so being super particular, I am like OCD, like the craziest logistics person ever. I will explain something until I'm blue in the face to not miss one point. And that pays off when you launch something. It pays off for, the price you negotiate. It pays off for what the opening night will look like, what your customer base will look like. I'm a very detailed-oriented person.
So that helps. Would you have said, this is such a journey to go from painting furniture and selling like on an online Etsy or something like that to now owning 4 stores. Would you have said, I'm a leader, like I've got leadership in me, the girl that moved to Nashville 7, 8, 10 years ago?
No. And this is something I still am learning. I used to be so intimidated by so many things, and I sold myself short for a really long time. And I don't even really know why. I made pretty much straight A's in school, but for some reason I never felt smart enough. I never felt equipped enough. I downplayed any role I was given, and it took until probably even a few years into Vinny for me to realize, like, whoa, like, look at what I've accomplished, and getting confidence in myself to see that. But by no means did I ever even think I was a leader. But that's been really beautiful because I was so intimidated in the beginning. And so for me to now be able to be confident in my skills, but also to be confident when I need help, and to ask either way and be okay with it.
So there's probably a couple things that go with that. Like there's the success stories along the way that build your confidence, but I also know you've joined some mastermind groups and some other cohorts that help bolster your leadership skills. So talk about the success that built confidence along the way, and talk about where you've maybe grabbed mentorship or some outside relationships to help you focus on your development.
Yes. So in the beginning, I longed for some kind of community, and I was not I don't want to say I wasn't well received as in people weren't nice to me, but retail can be very standoffish at times. You protect your customers, you protect your brand. And so I just longed to have someone to talk to when I was figuring this out. I mean, I did not have a fashion background. I was figuring this out on my own, and there wasn't many doors open. And so I kind of had to figure it out myself. And I'm grateful I did because it gave me the grit I needed. But because of that, when people started coming to me telling me that they had dreams and desires, I opened my arms probably too much, where I was like, come in. I will tell you anything that I've learned because no one helped me. And then it kind of got to this place where I was like, okay, I have a successful, 7-figure company. I need something. And throughout the way, I'd met some other business owners, and one in particular, I had reached out to her and I was like, I really feel like we need to start a mastermind. And we both reached out to some women that we kind of looked up to, and we started this mastermind. There's 5 of us in it. It's, we've all signed NDAs, and we all are 7 figures and can come together and talk about our pain points, but also talk about our growing points and what we've learned. And that has been so great to just walk alongside other women and walk alongside their praise stories, but also the hard stories. Yeah. And then I also, in Nashville, there at the Entrepreneur Center, there is EO and Catalyst, which is for business owners. And I did one of those programs, which is essentially like a glorified MBA, and you're walking alongside other business owners. And so that's been huge for me to just be with people who, get it. It can be lonely sometimes.
Before we actually hit record, we were kind of talking about your connection to the customer and the community that you wanted to create. But as you've moved up in your responsibilities, you've moved further away from those customers. So talk about that transition from you were working the floor in your first store, you were selling product, you were shipping, you were probably boxing, and now you're leading staff that's handling those tasks. So what's been great about that transition from doer to leader, and what's been hard about that transition?
Yes. So in the beginning, it was great. Even though I was overwhelmed, my hands were in everything. And so as a control freak, you love it. You're like, I know everything that's going on because I'm doing it. And it was so great to connect with customers. It was so fun to get all the merchandise in, to, merch the store. But it turned into the place where it just wasn't scalable for just me. And I just needed help. We were I was blowing through inventory and I needed support. And my husband is the one that, talked me through, and he was like, you really need to look at, what's the $10 an hour job to what's the $100 an hour job. And I had to write things out, and I had to kind of realize I can't do it all. And so I need to focus on the things that I can't train someone to do right now and hire into the people that, I can train. And so with that, I started building my team. And I knew that I had to train them and really have them be kind of a replacement for me. And so my focus used to be, loving the customer, empowering them, and then it turned to loving my team and empowering them so that they can love the customer.
That's really good. There's always difficult decisions you make along the way that end up being the most impactful. You talked about closing down a store during COVID, which had to be super challenging. So what are some of the most complicated and difficult decisions you've made that have actually paid off the most?
Yes, so many. Closing the store was very difficult. It was difficult because we didn't really go into the full reasons of why we closed. And, that can be hard sometimes when you're a storyteller to not be able to tell your full story. It just wasn't needed. It was just a call I had to make. And it made sense, and we have not looked back once. And so I do not regret that at all. Some of the changes were things that I wasn't doing out of fear. It was comfort. So in the beginning, I used to get all my clothing boxes delivered to my house because I was scared that someone would steal them at a business location. Packages I would take to the mail and have them mailed. And some of it was due to lack of time, and I didn't know that. I didn't know I was stretching myself so thin that I couldn't take a minute to look at, does this make the most sense? And then some things I was doing because I was scared. And so once I was able to step back and look at kind of my failures, this doesn't make the most sense. This is using a lot of your time, and figuring out, is this a fear thing? And why is it scary? Or is this a time thing that I'm spending so much time on everything that I'm not really looking into, can I change this? So once I took those two things out, I let go of fear and I said, okay, let's move the boxes here. Okay, let's change the shipping process to this. And getting more streamlined, it has brought more freedom. And then also, again, being able to continue to let things go and being okay if sometimes there's a mistake, and being okay with sometimes it doesn't go exactly how you want it to go.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I think anytime somebody starts a business that's a passion point of theirs, especially you confessed you're a detail person who likes to maybe control some of the outcomes, and I understand that 100%. When you're leading a staff who may do things differently than you do, as a leader, how do you go, okay, that's something that was a one and done, that's probably not going to happen again? Or when do you know, like, oh gosh, this is a systemic issue, I've got to go create a system that helps prevent this from happening in the future? Have those moments popped up for you where people do things differently and you feel like you have to address it?
Yes. And so one thing was looking at, what can I do? And like, what is my capacity? So I used to manage my entire team, and I've had up to, 25 women working for me. That wasn't realistic. And so especially because you're a small business, everyone wants to be in it. And there can sometimes be guilt if you don't include everyone in the circle every time. And that's just not realistic. And so one of the first things I had to do was I had to pick some core people and know those are the only people I speak to, and to equip them and to trust them of like, if I am telling them how things are going to run and what our mission and what our vision is, I have to trust that they're doing it underneath them. And so one thing was, okay, retail's really transient. So the people that I know are going to come and go a lot, I'm going to trust my team to love them and train them and manage them and hold them accountable. I don't need to be that person. And then it kind of turned to, okay, I have about 4 people. And there's going to be times that they handle things different. And I have to take a step back and say, okay, is it that big of a deal that they handled it that way? Let's table it. If it happens again and it continues to bother me, okay, maybe we talk about it. Because there's sometimes in the moment too, you have to look and you're saying, is that really the issue? Or you're just stressed because you have other things going on too? So I tend to table it. And if it happens again and I still have frustration, then I can address it. But also knowing that I am not the best at everything. I think one of my biggest goals when I speak to other business owners is I take the most pride that I have found people that do the job better than I can do. And that gives the most freedom. So someone that can merchandise the store better, someone that deals with operations better, picking people that thrive in their lane and trusting it, but still knowing that they can get swervy and, I can help redirect them.
That's good. What have been some of the biggest surprises? So obviously we're talking on the No One Ever Told Me podcast. Looking back over almost 7 years in the business, what do you wish someone would have told you when you started 7 years ago?
Wow. One thing was I had no idea. I mean, I think COVID is just still stinging pretty hard. The legal side and the legal side, I would have to know, workers' comp and leases and negotiations. And, that just comes with growing.
Yeah.
The other side would be to not take things as personal as you can take them. I did not set boundaries in the beginning. And that was one of my things that I learned really hard. I've learned some hard lessons in that in the beginning. But to set boundaries is so important. It protects your team. One, it really does, but then it just protects yourself. Like, I just can't be friends with employees. I can love them and I can support them and I can ask them what they got for their birthday, but they do not need to be the people that I'm texting about personal stuff and vice versa. So to set that boundary and to know that you can have people that like love your company and that walk alongside you in your company, but you still have to have the boundary of, boss to employee.
Yeah. And I think when you create a culture that feels like, you talked about empowering people are passionate about the brand, it probably feels more family than it feels army, So obviously you're going to make those mistakes where it's like, I may have crossed the line personally there or vice versa. And so I think coming to the conclusion of what your culture feels like, that's a difficult decision. I don't think you know that on the front end. We're going to work like this.
Yes.
You have to kind of fall and fail into that.
Oh, yes. I've failed many times, but we have a good system now. I'm really proud of it. And it came from a lot of communication and a lot of, at times, me being really humble and falling on the sword, and then times that I, put up my walls and said, we're not going to go here, and, laid the law down, which is sometimes hard.
What are your favorite places to shop at that aren't your store?
Ooh.
Are you allowed to say that?
Yes, I always represent and love other places. I wish I could say all local, but Anthropologie is one of mine. If anyone out there that owns Anthropologie hears this, my goal in creating this was to be an affordable Anthropologie.
Oh, that's cool.
I would sell to Anthropologie if they're like, we want Benny Louise to be the affordable Anthropologie. That would be like my biggest goal in life. Anthro and TJ Maxx, that's just really what I like.
Yeah.
I love walking and experiencing, seeing all the things there. Local, there's so many good local spots. I mean, on 12 South alone, Emerson Grace, Judith Bright, Poppy Monroe is for nails, but skincare, just so amazing.
You got your spots.
I have my spots.
So you're 7 years into the business. And what you thought success looked like 7 years ago is probably really different than how you define success now. If you have a hope for what Vinny looks like in the next 5 or 7 or 10 years, what are you hoping happens in the future? What does it look like?
Yes. So, in the beginning, I was just so hopeful a stranger would like my things, For me and for Vinny, it's really different. And for 7 years almost, I just identified as Vinny Louise. And, I just had my second little girl, and this past 6 months, I have really, especially through COVID too, so I would probably say the past year and a half, I've really realized that I don't need to be all of Vinny, and Vinny isn't all of me. And so my hope for me would be to stay in this advisory role. So I'm now in an advisory role, and it is my joy and love. I work probably 5 hours a week, and I get to kind of make the bigger decisions and check in with, some of my upper management. But I get to just see these girls thrive and love women and make really cool videos and everything and things I can't even do. So my goal for myself is really just to kind of stay in that advisory role. For Vinny, I just hope that we continue to do what we're doing. I don't think that we're going to open another store. I don't see that happening right now. But I continue to want to have some core members continue to grow and get really excited and passionate about it, and to continue to, be that light that, we were in the beginning to new faces and old.
I love it. So it's not sales figure goals. You're like, it's not that I want to open 4 more stores or I want to sell 20% more this year. It's people. You want to continue to develop people. You want to continue to stay in your lane, the things you're really good at, and empower people to do the things they're really good at. That's cool.
Yes.
I love that. You're like a bona fide entrepreneur now. So you've got some other irons in the fire. Tell us about some of the other projects you're developing.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm very content where Benny is because, you know, we are hitting good numbers, and we're hitting numbers that I didn't think you could hit during COVID. And so because of that, I know, yes, that I could grow it if I wanted to grow it, but I have had some new business ideas. And so I know within myself, I don't have the capacity to run full on in 3 new ways. And so I love Vinny, love where it's at. And we'll make sure that it maintains and continues to grow slowly. But through it, I have realized that I love coaching. And so I've consulted and coached for the last 6 years on and off, and mainly other, you know, small businesses who are wanting to launch. And it's kind of my phase 3. You know, I was talking about phase 1 was loving and empowering my customer. And then phase 2 was loving and empowering my employees. And then now I'm meeting with women who are stuck, women who are tied to their job, who are the face of it and can't step away, or who have lost what their brand is. And that is one thing I'm really proud with Benny is we've stayed on brand for 7 years. And my heart now is working with women or men, just small businesses, and equipping them with the tools to get unstuck and to get to this freedom that I feel like I am with Benny. So that is one of my new little projects. I have not dropped the name yet, but I guess I'll say it on here.
Okay.
It is
Breaking
called Get After Growth.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. If that got to scale the way you hoped it would, that's probably really client focused.
Yes.
What do you see the max of that looking like over the course of a year?
Yeah, so I've already kind of mapped it out. I plan to only take 4 people on a quarter.
Okay.
And that's really just because I know my time and I want to be respectful to theirs. And so currently right now I have 2 different packages, but yeah, it'll only be 4 clients a quarter. They do have the option to like renew. If they did, I then would only take 3.
Okay.
So 16 max a year, but that just depends on if people are renewing or not. And then by next year, we'll start doing retreats and bringing some speakers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, if you need a speaker, just let me know. I
Yes,
could probably
yes.
find time. If you were sitting across the table from Ginny, 10 or 15 years ago, what advice would you give her?
The advice that I would give her is continue to have confidence in yourself. That's one thing, like I said, I didn't really have in the beginning, and you can do this, you know. And then I would also say to find some people to walk alongside you.
That's good.
Yeah.
You're a girl mom, and I'm a girl dad, and I'm super pumped to have great examples in my kids' life of women who are really figuring it out and making a path forward. And whatever they choose to do professionally one day, I hope that path is downstream of conviction, like you're talking about, like, I can do this. I can become a leader. I can become an entrepreneur. And whether they own their own business or work for somebody else, it doesn't matter. But what are your hopes for your girls?
I really want to let them be open to explore and dream. My mom, I was the kid that had a new hobby and new sport every year. And there's sometimes, that you want them to at least have one thing that they stay good at, but then to let them explore, because you're not going to figure it out. I mean, that was me. I went to 3 different colleges. I moved several cities. I had 2 different majors. I did project management for a pharmaceutical sales company. I had an antique booth. I think because my mom allowed me to explore, I felt the confidence to explore in other areas. So I don't, as much as I'd love both my girls to take over Vinny one day, I want them to just be super excited in what they want to create, and I just want to celebrate them in it.
That's so good. Ginny, thanks so much for sharing your story and all the success you're having with Vinny and with the new coaching business. It's a pleasure to watch everything you're getting to do.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to hearing this.
It's going to be great.
Thanks.
I always find it inspiring when leaders simply go and figure it out and bring people with them as they find success. Ginny is crushing it. A couple takeaways for me were, I love the advice she gave to a younger Ginny. She said, hey, you can do this, and make sure you find some people to walk alongside you. So many of us need to know that we have it in us to take steps towards our dreams if we simply knew that what we hoped for was not only possible, but probable when we take action. And knowing that if you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to go far, grab some friends and take them with you on a meaningful journey. Thanks for listening today. If you're finding these conversations helpful, then make sure you rate, share, and subscribe so more people can get the help that you're getting. And make plans to join us for the next No One Ever Told Me interview.